a majority of the blogs on diabetes are written by women. Can you comment on that?
That's probably true. I'm not sure why that is. I think that most of the personal blogs are that they're sort of personal diaries, and there's a lot of I think emotional things that people share, and they kind of opening up in their experiences. And I guess maybe women are more inclined to talk about relationships and to want to share that kind of information. When I think about it, the few sites and blogs that I know that are written primarily by men tend to be a little more, nonfiction.
Nuts and bolts.
Nuts and bolts, information covering the news. There's a guy who has Diabetes Advocate, and he writes a lot about, government policies and laws that affect people with diabetes, or a lot of sites that, just cover all the news stories and the newest technologies. But there are a few men who write more about their personal experiences, one of them being Scott Johnson, who has a site called Scott's Diabetes Blog. I guess it's Scott's Diabetes Blog.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's great, and he actually posts some photos from his personal life and talks about a lot of the frustrations, and he's also struggling with kind of diet issues, and had a great response to that. Because there's so many people out there going through this, and it's just so nice to see a real person sharing.
Traditionally, it has been the woman is the caregiver in the home. And I know that often if the man has diabetes, it's the woman that cooks the food, and there's more sociology things going on with this disease than just taking care. It affects the person that's the caregiver and the cook in the family.
True, and I guess there's a sort of this male invincibility issue at stake here, because it seems like I've had a lot of women write to me too saying my husband, kind of is either in denial or just always wants everything to be fine, and the woman's fussing about the diet and trying to improve things, and
right.
And he's not as tuned in. Or, in one case, a woman was saying that she sort of has to manage all of the prescriptions and make sure that, his pharmacy knows what he needs, because he'll sort of let it go. And maybe there is a sort of an aspect to that, which we all have to a certain extent, where you just don't want to look at your mortality in the face, right? I mean, you don't want to think that you're so vulnerable and that you're this person with this chronic disease, because, that just, it's frightening to think that you're deteriorating, right?
There is this syndrome, too. I think Dr. Polonsky's looked at it, and Joe Silowaychek, that fathers, if their son gets diabetes, sometimes the father splits, rejects the child. And you've seen that with other diseases, too, where marriages break up when someone gets sick, and it's amazing, the gender differences to the reaction towards disease.
True. Luckily, that's not the case in all cases, but I think that there is... there's a certain aspect of that. When children get chronically ill, it really tears people up.
It's a challenge for the family.
It does. It's a hard one, and people react very differently to that. And I guess it's fight or flight, right? So some people take the flight and just want to get away from it, and they can't deal with it, and they can't watch, what they consider something that painful. But on the other hand, we're lucky. Diabetes is something that you really can do something about, And of course, it's unpleasant to give your child injections, but if you give your child those injections, that child can live a very satisfying life. So I always try to look on the bright side of things. I mean, there are worse ailments.
That's true.
To have.
Lots.
Yeah. So,
Amy, I was telling my friends and staff that I was coming to meet with you for lunch. I said I'm going to go meet with the diabetes blog queen. And I guess I don't know if I'd seen that anywhere, but what's your response to that?
I think you made that up. Oh, that's so nice. I don't know. Actually, it's so delightful to me to see now how many people are coming forward and starting their own blogs. It's like this whole, community popping up. And as I was mentioning to you earlier, the only drawback is that it's sort of hard to follow them all, to read them all. But, there are subscription services like Bloglines and I guess Delicious and other web tools that are fairly easy to use that help you sort of be able to overview each day, okay, what is each of the bloggers talking about? And I know that I have a lot of subscribers on those services, so I know there are a lot of people out there who are watching me and reacting to what I'm writing, which is just, it's so wonderful because a lot of time and energy goes into it. And at this point, I feel like if I didn't have the blog and I just had the diabetes, then it would be kind of unpleasant. But this way I have something to get excited about, some place to channel my energy. And even if I have a bad day or a bad week, I think, well, I can write a funny post about it, and then it is cathartic,
Have you gotten any spams?
Yes, spam is an issue.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I have not had to use any major aggressive tactics like closing off comments or anything, but I do monitor it. And there's a lot of what's called trackback spam, which is basically another way for companies to post their URL on your site, and I'm always deleting that stuff. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I get a lot of just genuine people from all over the world writing to me, mm-hmm. which is amazing. I've had people from New Zealand, Denmark, Spain, a lot of people from the UK. A lot of people either don't know how to post a comment on the blog or don't feel comfortable putting it up publicly. Mm-hmm. So I'm now getting inundated with email from people, which is also wonderful, but I want to feel like I want to respond to everyone personally. It's sometimes a little hard to keep up with it. But I've had people write to me in all different situations, saying my child was just diagnosed or my nephew has it now and what can I do to help? And mm-hmm. People send me news tips, which is also great because they say, have you seen this article? Did you hear about that? And,
do you fold those into your next?
Oh yeah, I definitely use them. In some cases it's stuff that I already knew about. Right. But in a lot of cases I can't. I'm just one person, so it helps me make sure that I'm getting a good overview of all the things that are going on. Mm-hmm. And in some cases people send me a news article and say, well, I'd be curious what your reaction is to this, and then mm-hmm. I'll do a post about it and say, mm-hmm. here's what I think. Mm-hmm. So it's very interactive. That's the other thing that's really fun.
What's your background? What's your education?
So I actually, I'm a trained journalist. Mm-hmm. I have a bachelor's in journalism and a master's in communication studies. Mm-hmm. And so I've sort of worked both sides of the fence. I've been a journalist initially, then I was an editor, magazine editor, then I've done marketing and PR for a number of years, and for the last decade or so I've been a freelance writer. So I was already writing about technology mm-hmm. when I was diagnosed with diabetes. And I obviously got very curious about it and started kind of dabbling in that, researching it a little bit. And it just coincided with the time when blogs were coming out and all this new software, which makes it very easy to publish on the web as an independent person. Yeah. So I thought, well, let me try this. It'll be fun. And just put it out there. And I wasn't sure would I really have enough material, what am I going to talk about, but let's give this a try. And I was just amazed at the reaction from day one, how many people found it and responded.
Has it ever been an issue between giving medical advice and just diabetes information?
So I do mention in my profile on the blog that I am not a medical professional. I have mm-hmm. no, authority to tell anyone how they should be, diagnosed or treating themselves. And I do have people, especially writing emails to me asking about, do you think I should take this medication or whatnot?
Right.
I always say, but I'm also try to be a resource. So I say, hey, here's 2 websites that cover that drug. Maybe you want to read up on it. Or, here's a expert in this area that you can contact. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I've had a number of partners contact me saying, my sister is doing so badly. I don't know how can I help her? Can you give me some resources? So a lot of times it's not the person with diabetes themselves, but someone else who's looking for help. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, psychological issues where people are depressed or they're in denial and they're just not taking care of themselves. And I generally send those people straight over to the Behavioral Diabetes Institute because mm-hmm. I think they're the best authorities on that.